From UFOs to psychic powers and government conspiracies, history is riddled with unexplained events. You can turn back now or learn the stuff they don't want you to know. A production of iHeartRadio.
Hello, welcome back to the show. My name is Matt.
My name is Noel.
They call me Ben. We're joined, as always, with our super producer, Dylan the Tennessee Pal Fagan. Most importantly, you are you. You are here. That makes this the stuff they don't want you to know if you are joining us for tonight's listener mail program. Let us be the first to welcome you to June 26th. Guys, it's almost the end of June, which means we are once again in rutabaga season.
Oh, thank goodness. Finally. Matt, woo! I heard you got a rutabaga hanging out in your fridge that you're going to dice up and delightfully roast, perhaps?
I do indeed, but I needs me some more rutabagas, so let's see if we can find one.
Okay, sounds good.
Can you do some digging, Dylan?
Oh, I'm sorry. We were looking for, what is rutabaga?
Wow, Wilhelm.
What is rutabaga is the question. I believe, Ben, you got some correspondence to shed some light on just that very question.
All right. Since it's just the five of us and millions of other people, we will share the following correspondence from our pal that I hope we can identify. His title is Chef. His name rhymes with Ted. So this fellow conspiracy realist says, spoilers, rutabagas are not true turnips. They're the unholy children of turnips and cabbages.
Oh, okay. Unholy indeed.
Well, we're obviously fans, and Matt, thank you for doing the research here on on your case study of a rutabaga. How you planning to cook it?
Like any other root vegetable, baby. Put it in the oven after being chopped and give it some seasoning.
Yummy.
I like that quiet storm voice. And we like your voices as well. So we're going to take a quick break for a word from our sponsors. And when we return, we're going to explore synthetic estrogen. We're going to talk about analog society versus a surveillance state. We're going to study brain stuff for a second. But before we do any of that, we're going to have a follow-up with our gas station episode. Stuff gas stations don't want you to know. We asked you, fellow conspiracy realists, for your firsthand experiences, and gosh knows, we got some great stuff.
And we've returned with a listener coming to us from rural Bartow County, Georgia. Fellas, where's Bartow County in relation to where we are?
Is this an official inquiry?
It is an official inquiry. I guess I could Google it myself. I know I've heard the name, but I don't. I'm really bad at geography. Oh, it looks pretty. Cartersville, near Kennesaw. So really not that far from us at all. About an hour drive from where we currently sit. And if it's anything like where we live, we talked about this openly on the episode, there's going to be some sketchy gas stations. And sure enough, our listener, and ominous, told us about just that very thing. Hi, guys. Been listening forever, and I've been looking forward to the gas station episode since y'all first mentioned it. I live in rural Bartow County, Georgia, and nearly every gas station around that isn't a Quick Trip, which is a big, chain around here, or a racetrack, which I think is a little more national, has slot machines. Locally, everyone refers to them as the ding-dings. Really love that. Gonna co-opt that in my own daily life, the ding-dings. Part of the reason that the sketchy gas stations often have lots of random items is to use as prizes for playing. According to the official store policy, you can only cash out for store credit, and having those items around makes it appear more legit. One place that used to be near me had a whole side building they called the game room, which I've mentioned seeing around me as well. Just slap full of ding-dings and a bunch of prizes that you could win. The thing is, you could always get cash. I don't play often, but the handful of times I've played and won, I was able to get cash, whether or not I was a regular or not. There's no chance those machines would be so popular otherwise. The sketchiest gas station I know of is also the one closest to me. I'm in the middle of nowhere, and it's right at the end of my street. Over the years, the amount of products in the store has dwindled to next to nothing. They have gas, cigarettes, beer, soda, lottery, and then shelves with some random dusty items and candy. The weird and sketchy part, they used to have 4 older slot machines. They've recently upgraded to 4 huge, brand new fancy ones, while the rest of the store is absolutely depleted. What's weirder about this is that hardly anyone plays them. Every once in a while, I'll see a local tweaker on a machine, but no, I'm not laughing at addiction problems. The term tweaker always makes me giggle. But never enough to justify how much those suckers cost. The only person I see regularly feeding money into it is an employee, which makes me really wonder if my neighborhood sketch station is actually a front for money laundering.
My money's running to the laundry like there's something smelly on me.
Yeah, for sure. Anyway, you're more than welcome to use this on the podcast, and you can just call me Ann Ominous. That's my old AOL username that I thought was so cool and edgy when I was 14. Well, I think it's still cool and edgy today, Ann Ominous, and I dig the reference to AIM. It was a golden time for internet communication for us all. Boy, oh boy, does this ever hit home some of the stuff we talked about in that episode in terms of, we kind of, ran the gamut here in terms of loose adherence to the law where these machines are concerned. The idea that it's supposed to only pay with prizes and store credit, but that it's more than easy enough to convert those winnings to cold hard cash. And the idea of these potentially being fronts for other types of illicit activity. Guys, is there anything about Ann Ominous's email that hit home for you?
First off, Miss Ominous, if I may be formal here, thank you so much for writing in and verifying something we said earlier. One of the signals of a sketchy gas station is indeed going to be dust upon some of the products, not to sound like one of those old jerks in basic with putting on the white gloves and walking around and testing dust. Do you guys remember that?
Of course. Yeah. Classic trope
but,
of the old drill sergeant.
Yeah. But if you see that, right, if you see the visible dust, it is a signal that there may be something interesting afoot. And we cannot cast aspersion on the choices of those owner operators. But Miss Ominous, you have provided multiple details that seem to indicate this is worth looking into. Now, we're not going to snitch on this gas station, are we, Miss Ominous? Are we, Noel?
I don't think so. We don't have as the snitches.
No call in the gambling unit,
no,
right?
With that, we did talk about there being a direct hotline to the GBI for just such snitchery. But yeah, I've certainly, it's weird how many gas stations there are in certain rural areas, in certain maybe like food deserty type areas, like I mentioned I live in. It just doesn't seem like a small stretch like that could sustain that many of the same exact business, oftentimes on the same exact side of the street, et cetera. And then you do start to see in that glut of these types of businesses, some of them becoming more and more depleted and yet somehow still remaining. I don't know that I've ever seen a gas station go out of business. It's just, I don't know. It's interesting and a little bit odd. And I do tend to lean towards nefarious activities from time to time. But this whole, cash payout thing, it absolutely confirms what we had suspected.
Can I tell you guys my favorite thing about Ann Ominous's message?
By all means.
Mm-hmm.
It's referring to these as ding-ding machines.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys have ever seen this glorious show that you can find right now. I've seen it because I'm a father of a young son who loves the show Big City Greens. It is a fantastic little animated series with one of the main characters being Cricket Green. And he goes
that's
around.
Big City Greens, plural.
Yes. And he goes around, it's the Greens is the family. He goes around and he calls people ding ding all the time.
Heck yeah.
And he's like, you ding ding.
I say that sometimes.
It's one of my
I say that to my
favorite
kids
things.
sometimes. I call my kid a ding ding. Quite regularly.
That's up there with Bozo.
Yeah, but it made me think of all these machines. And there's even, I found an article from, what is this? 95.5 WSB. We knew WSB, the radio, radio channel, radio station.
Radio networks. Yeah, station, exactly.
But they refer to these as ding ding gambling machines as well, which is very funny to me.
I like the rhyme. And we also want you to know, Miss Ominous, we will never call our fellow compatriots ding dings, but we want you to know that you are not alone in a lot of firsthand accounts we have received about gas stations. And I got to ask you guys, after we recorded the stuff gas stations don't want you to know, how were your experiences when you visited a gas station next? Did you guys feel like more tuned in to things? Did anybody else purposely visit out of the way gas station?
No, I don't need to because there's a gazillion of them in my neck of the woods, and I typically go to the same two. Yeah, one of them definitely has this big old gambling parlor, and it of the two is the least legit seeming one. So yeah.
Did you ever play?
No, I never have, but you know what? Maybe I will, and then see how it goes because I am kind of a regular. They know me there, so I bet you if anyone was going to get any kind of special, secret treatment, right? It might be me. Mm-hmm. Well, I'll tell you one thing that this discussion that we had did prompt me to do was look a little more into just gas station crime rates, specifically here in Atlanta. And Matt, we were talking off air. You found a story specifically surrounding these gambling machines and specifically in Bartow County, where sheriff's office officials are looking for 3 people who were seen stealing from gambling machines. The Bartow County Sheriff's Office is asking for the public's help in identifying 3 people connected to stealing money from gambling machines. So there's money in the gambling machines. Deputies say the thefts took place on November 20th at a Texaco gas station on Cassville White Road in Cartersville. 2 men and 1 woman sat at the ding ding gambling machines. This is news to me. The press is actually calling it that too. And after all 3 individuals were done playing, the cashier provided them with store credit upon them bringing the credit voucher to redeem. Police say store camera footage showed 2 of the suspects inserting money into the machine and hitting the collect button to get a voucher for store credit. They then opened the machine with a duplicate key, retracted the cash box, and took all the money. And of course, my mind immediately asked the question, why is there money inside these machines? To which I answered, because people put the money into the machine to play, and the money is stored in there, and that's how they take their profit. It's not dispensing money like a gambling machine in Vegas might with actual coins that flood out of the old style gambling machines. An employee checked the machines the next day and discovered approximately $2,664 missing between 3 of the machines. That's a decent haul for these machines at a rural gas station. So I just think that's another point towards the profitability of these things and also the potential for crime surrounding them. Oh, and really quickly though, while we're at it, Ben, you found a voicemail that referenced this very thing, and thought it might be a good way to take us out of this segment.
Yeah, Miss Ominous and fellow conspiracy realist, we're working live. Not all of us have heard this. We got a message from a trucker regarding gas stations and reacting specifically to the issues of trafficking. And we think this is very important. So we're just going to play this message. Hopefully this will reach people who may need assistance. So here we are with Sasquatch.
Hey guys, you can call me Sasquatch's stunt double, calling in again. I just listened to your podcast about gas stations and truck stops, and been a trucker for almost 2 decades now, and I have seen some crazy things. But one of the things you guys mentioned about was the human trafficking at truck stops and gas stations, and I have to say that has been greatly reduced. You don't see it as often. It's still out there, happens occasionally, but there is a group called Truckers Against Trafficking, and it was started by a mother and her 4 daughters and one of their friends. And they have done a campaign across the U.S. to educate truck drivers, truck stops, and gas fuel stops about human trafficking, what to look for, the issues that come along with, and the damage it does to people. And they are a fantastic organization. It's definitely something people should know about. And I really believe that the reason why so many truck stops are safe havens for people in trafficking situations is because of that organization. And the fact that you don't see it as much happening in the world is because of that organization.
And we'll pause it there. We just, I think, collectively agree this is an important message to send out to the world.
Yeah, I mean, truckers are certainly a frontline position in this fight, and the fact that they can kind of band together to help identify some of these issues is a powerful thing, you know.
Now, Sasquatch Stunt Double also has an awesome name, and Matt, you may have spoken with him directly in the past. There's another part of this message that we may play in the future, objecting to the term lot lizards, which we all, I think, collectively disagree
Absolutely.
with.
We mentioned that when we brought it up. It is just kind of like a parlance of the time, I guess, let's just say.
Yeah, we heard from Sasquatch's Stunt Double back when we were talking about stolen meat. He had some cool insight about that.
Well, with that, let's take a quick break, hear a word from our sponsor, and then come back with more messages from you.
And we've returned, guys. I have a really important update. This is Final Fantasy MTG. I'm holding a pack. We're not going to open it. We're just going to state it exists. It's real. I have a bunch of packs.
Heck yeah.
And I got one of these little, I can't remember how to say this, cactuar.
You're a cactus fella doing a little jump.
Is that a rare pull?
No, but it's I think it's a common, or maybe
how many
uncommon.
packs did you get? You got all like booster packs, right?
Everyone that was available to me in my immediate vicinity. I purchased every single one. I'm now in debt. I need your help. I've started a GoFundMe for Matt's MTG addiction issues. That's not the most important thing, guys. The important thing is we got a great message from Maximus. Maximus is bringing up something that we talked about back in 2018 when we made our highly important episode, Are Frogs Really Changing Gender? Also harkens back to our August 15th, 2023 classic version of that episode. This is, you guys remember that whole thing that Alex Jones put all of the world through when he said that phrase about
the frogs gay.
Friggin' frogs. Yes, there you go. Well, and then, we on this show looked it up and said, oh crap, there are some really weird things going on actually with stuff ending up in the water and having effects on amphibian populations. Well, Maximus has called in with a whole other group of animals that are being affected by the stuff we humans put into ourselves and then pee into our toilets.
Oh dear.
So here we go.
This is Maximus. Please do an episode exploring the correlation between birth control becoming widely available in the United States of America and the declining population of fish as water is recycled from wastewater systems to drinking water systems and then recycled to freshwater systems, and is a direct correlation in the declining population of freshwater fish in North America. As always, thank you. Keep doing you.
Whoa. Okay, so that sounds a little weird, right? You're like, oh, come on now. There can't be a correlation between any of that stuff. That doesn't make any sense. Birth control and fish populations? That's human stuff and fish stuff, and those two things don't come together at all. Well, you'd be wrong, just as I was. As I was when I initially encountered Maximus's message there. Because if you do a quick little search on the internet machines, you're going to find several articles that are written in the news about these things and several scientific journals that are reporting this very thing. First, we'll jump to a 2008 article within The Guardian, written by James Anderson, titled Birth Control for Fish. And in this article, you will learn about the studies run by Dr. Karen Kidd of the University of New Brunswick in Canada, and some very upsetting results. Very, very upsetting results. She and her team had a really cool idea. There's a group of lakes out there in Canada and Ontario that's just north of Minnesota, just east of Winnipeg, called the IISD Experimental Lakes Area. And IISD, by the way, stands for International Institute for Sustainable Development. And this lakes area has a whole bunch of freshwater lakes. What they did, they went to over 58 research lakes, and they checked out all of the populations of freshwater fish within those lakes. They gathered as much information as they possibly could. Then they went to another lake and made sure that lake had an average population of all the fish that was found in the other 58 lakes. They basically made a perfect version of an average lake within this area, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then they started adding teeny tiny amounts of a synthetic estrogen that's used, it's commonly used in birth control pills for humans. And they found that populations of specific fish were altered so much that the population was almost decimated within the lake, almost none, because the males of that specific fish started to lose their gonads. And they found that which is crazy to think about, and the males were also unable to reproduce. Like, you can imagine those two things being correlated, but it's real stuff. Then she went on to author more articles and do more science, checking out what happens when there's just teeny tiny trace amounts of this synthetic estrogen within freshwater lakes and rivers. And they found in other species, this tiny amount is having a major effect on the ability of these fish to breed. And guys, here is the major problem that Maximus points out there. Teeny tiny trace amounts of this stuff can have an effect. And every time humans who are on birth control pee, they release trace amounts of the synthetic estrogen into the water systems. The wastewater plants are not able to process pharmaceuticals. We've talked about that before on this show, which then get sent back into the freshwater systems, which then have effects on the fish population, which can then have an effect on the other species that are within that ecosystem that prey upon these smaller fish. I didn't know this was real, guys. I didn't think this was real. I didn't think there could be this kind of effect, especially from the waste that we produce after taking pharmaceuticals. In my mind, it was always if pills end up in the water system because they go down a drain or something. But no, it is processed materials that have the effect.
Okay.
Yeah. There's a lot more you can go into here. By the way, one of the people that co-authored one of these studies titled Collapse of a Fish Population After Exposure to a Synthetic Estrogen that was published in 2007. One of the co-authors is Robert Evans.
Different Robert
Weird.
Evans, right?
I think so.
We'll see.
Robert E.
Yeah.
Evans.
Yeah,
I don't
got
know. I don't know. You can look up all of this stuff. You can search for a 2014 article. New study finds estrogen has detrimental and surprising effects on freshwater wildlife. That's based on a whole other paper that was published titled Direct and Indirect Responses of a Freshwater Food Web to a Potent Synthetic Estrogen. It feels like a major problem that we're not thinking about, not talking about. I don't know. It feels like if that one small synthetic thing, hormone, can have an effect on the fish population, as well as we know specific herbicides and pesticides can have an effect on amphibian populations. It does make me wonder how much of the wastewater runoff from our treatment plants actually have effects on the wider ecosystems that we're kind of forgetting to even look at. And that's it. All right. Well, we'll be right back with more messages from you.
Friggin' frogs!
We have returned. We've been going through a bit of a Palantir phase. We received a interesting thought experiment from a fellow listener. going by Mr. Delay. So we're going to hear from Mr. Delay.
Lay. Because
No
delay.
kidding.
Yeah,
This is taking a second to load up. Let's keep it in.
Hey, boys. You can call me Mr. Delay, and feel free to use my message on the air. I just listened to your episodes about train hoppers and your new strange news segment about Palantir. And I had a thought. As, companies like Palantir are increasingly putting Americans, certain groups of Americans under surveillance, and as the economy gets worse and homelessness is on the rise, and many of the people that will suffer from both of these things will be younger, more tech-savvy generations. Might we see a resurgence in train hopping culture in the next few years? Just a thought I want to share with y'all.
So the question then becomes, first off, thank you, Mr. Delay. The question becomes, is the pendulum of state surveillance going to swing so far that people, especially in younger generations, start to unplug or become increasingly analog? I don't know.
Go off grid. I used to know some train kids back in my own town. They always had a dog with a bandana with a name like Rusty or something. But good, cool folks. They're always in like punk bands. And I actually knew a couple of folks who got big time arrested, like Sting style. Like there were helicopters involved. It was a big deal pulling them off the train and throwing them in the paddy wagon. It is considered like stowing away is a pretty serious offense, and they took it pretty seriously. But I was really taken aback by how aggressive the authorities were.
Oh yeah, the railroad bulls.
But to answer your question, I mean, I think it's certainly that was their goal in those days, was to be invisible, was to be off grid, was to move in silence. And it certainly seems like if you don't get caught in that fashion, it is a good way of doing it.
Yeah. So what do you guys think about what Mr. Delay is proposing here? Noel, you've noticed that, or you've noted that there is a real contingent of what are sometimes called vagabonds or modern hobos in the United States today. Matt, interested in your experience as well. I know that we have all at various times throughout our strange careers considered going off the grid. And Dylan was pointing out before we recorded the idea that it is suspicious to not be on social media at this point. So what's your take, man? Do you think, like Noel and I do, that more people might be tempted to live in an analog society?
Yeah, I don't know if I agree that they'll be using the trains like that. I think it'll be more isolated communities and, just houses further away from each other. I think we're going to start doing that. That's what humanity seems to be poised to set down that path.
Yeah, it's interesting how, it's almost cliche to say, but with the increasing connectivity of the internet and social media, it almost just, serves to push people further apart in real life. And like anything, you're going to see a backlash and sort of like let's turn the clock back a little bit. With streaming services and things like that, or like video streaming and also music, of course, people are now buying more Blu-rays. People are buying more vinyl records. It just feels like there's always kind of a backlash against the popular movement. People are like wanting to read things and holding it in their hands. I just think this is a very similar impulse, right?
Oh, yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, because, also we have to pause just really quickly here to give you a stuff they don't want you to know recommendation. If ever, as Noel was saying, you see a Blu-ray or a dusty collection of CDs at the counter of your local gas station, buy them. Buy the mixtape. You know what I mean? You see like the Poughkeepsie Posse or something.
Of course.
Pick it up as long as it's not over $30. Is that okay? Do you guys ever buy the sort of sketchy CDs that you see?
Yeah, especially when I was driving the aforementioned 16 disc changer beatermobile that I talked about in our previous episode.
Legendary. Did you have a name for that vehicle?
No, I just made up Beatermobile, and I think I like that.
I like that too. What's your social security number?
It's
there's one last thing we wanted to share. A lot of folks have written to us about the following. We've talked at length about large language models, sometimes called AI, problematically. And the most famous of those in the West is something called ChatGPT. Now, it's quite common in education and day-to-day life for people to use ChatGPT pretty often, and not to sound like old entities shouting at the sky. But I think we've all harbored concerns that using this stuff may harm cognitive abilities at some point and to some degree. There's a new study that was recently published from researchers at MIT's Media Lab that gives a little bit of quantitative basis to this, similar to the Alex Jones frog stuff, right? And the dangers of synthetic estrogen emission and transmission throughout, an unregulated ecosystem. This study, guys, have we heard about this? It's kind of breaking news. Okay.
No, I'm excited to hear about it, though. Maybe excited is the wrong word. I'm fascinated to hear about it.
Right. We should ask ChatGPT about it. The study divides 54 subjects, all from Boston, all between 18 to 39 years old, and it put them in 3 groups. And it asked them to write essays like you would write in a college entrance exam, right? Or a qualifier exam like the SAT. And one group uses ChatGPT, one group uses Google, and the third group is just working the way you would in, say, the 1950s or something, right? Just the treasures in their own minds. And while they were working on these questions, the researchers used an EEG to record the brain activity of these folks writing these essays. And they recorded it across 32 regions of the brain. And they found that, provably, with an admittedly small sample size, the ChatGPT group had the lowest brain engagement, and, this is a quote from the study, consistently underperformed at neural, linguistic, and behavioral levels. What do we think about that? Does that jibe with earlier conversations?
Yes.
Should we be concerned?
Yes, and yes, I think so. I don't mess with them at all. And I don't know if maybe it's just, it's not appealing to me. It's less of like a philosophical thing than it doesn't particularly interest me. And maybe that is me getting aged out of a new thing to a degree, being an old man shouting at cloud. But yeah, I can imagine even just the way people get obsessed and addicted to the internet and to social media and things. This is just an escalation of that because it like talks back and sort of acts as a stand-in for some of that common sense, that kind of critical thinking, and those muscles then kind of atrophy.
Well, yeah, it's stepped offloading of processing power, right?
Yeah.
So every time you have an aid, let's say you've got books that you're looking at, that's a lot of the processing power that you would be using. It's already written down, somebody else's thoughts, somebody else's words, and now you're taking that in and translating that into your thoughts, right? Well, then if you got Google, you're doing kind of the same thing, but now you've got access to way more thoughts from way more people and you're processing all that stuff. Then if you're in ChatGPT, you really are offloading all of the conceptualization, all of the crystallization. It is now in the hands of something else, and you're just going to parrot back. You're just now a conduit through which these computers are processing all of the information. So I could totally see why it makes the old noggin stop working as well as it did before, at least.
100%.
That's a brilliant observation, Matt. It reminds me, what you just said reminds me of the old evenings when the calculator was proliferating, right? And there was quite a bit of social panic and hullabaloo. And people were saying, oh, these kids, what's that movie, Stand and Deliver?
I don't know.
Edward James Olmos, he's like, these kids. But there was this moment wherein the adults of the day were saying, look, if every kid learns math via a calculator, then how will they do trigonometry in their heads? How will they do long division? And turns out that was a good question, because we don't know a ton of people in the modern day in the West who can do trigonometry or long division in their heads.
Unless that's your specialty, or unless, you're just one of those people that's fascinated with old school math. Because now even like the top dogs have, very powerful computers that offload a lot of that. A lot of those duties too. Not to mention the use of AI and quantum computing. We talked about that with Jorge Chan on a recent episode of Ridiculous History that y'all should check out. Very, very interesting and kind of scary stuff in terms of that offloading.
Think about it this way, guys. A couple of years after we were born, the first state in the United States decided that calculators are necessary for their standard exams. Before that, it was 1975 when the United States especially said, hey, maybe calculators would be good for students in 8th grade and above. Maybe we should use these calculator things. Like that's crazy to think. It's been since we've been alive, but still, ever since we've been alive, we've had access to calculators. Mm-hmm. And so our brains were never forced to learn the things that those before us were forced to do, right? The computing power.
And we've talked about this often, but one could argue that when you free up that stuff, it can adapt to do other stuff that is maybe more beneficial. But when you start offloading kind of everything and just thought and critical thinking in general, that does seem like a really dangerous and slippery slope.
And that's a point we want to get to. Exactly. Well put. The idea of the brain, the human brain as the great repurposer, does have a lot of validity to a certain threshold. The name of the study, shout out to you, Dylan, for introducing transactive memory. I think we read a lot of the same books. The name of the study will give us a bit of a hint of why this may be different to the earlier comparison we introduced about calculators. Here is the title: Your Brain on ChatGPT, Accumulation of, hear this well, Cognitive Debt when Using an AI Assistant for Essay Writing Task. And then a little triangle at the top like an asterisk. 8 authors. Fantastic work, most from MIT, one from Wellesley, also in Massachusetts. To your point, Noel, it makes us wonder whether there are some specific regions of the brain that just have to do that one thing, right? Mm-hmm. That one aspect of intelligence or processing. That may be the muscle Matt is referring to when we're talking about, atrophy of these faculties, atrophy of these faculties.
I like it.
That sounds like what band would make that album?
I don't know. Corrosion of Conformity.
Is that a real band?
It is.
Are they good?
I don't know.
And we got a hell yeah from our Tennessee pal. I feel like it's inevitable. I think we all agree that unless we reach an inflection point similar to the background of the Dune universe, when there was a Butlerian jihad against thinking machines, I believe the future of the human is increasingly cybernetic. And I'm interested to hear, I think we all are interested to hear from you guys about how you see your children's education going forward in a world where ChatGPT kind of becomes like the next iteration of a calculator on a test.
Well, yuck.
Yeah, and that is part of the conversation around it, like in terms of it as a tool, and there are some very interesting and useful and relevant ways to use it. But unfortunately, it just seems that a lot of people are using it in place of, things that maybe it shouldn't be used for.
Well, I mean, it's really tough for me, and I think I might just be having old man syndrome every time I think about this stuff. But The skill of searching for something, maybe we don't need that anymore, right? Necessarily. But the skill of sorting through sources, sorting through information, and then putting that information together in your head does feel like the exact thing like that we talk about on the show that's so important, right? The critical thinking thing, the ability to create a third thought out of two different thoughts. And if we really do put something in place of that overall for all of society, for kids, like that's the downfall of humanity.
Well,
I think.
not to mention if you're just trusting something like that so implicitly and you're offloading your own personal cognitive ability to differentiate between fact and fiction and whatever various perspectives, then let's say there were bad actors, or let's say that the AI did start to become sentient and wanted to use that trust against us. I mean, I don't mean to be too alarmist, but if you're completely trusting in this, that is a real dangerous situation, because then it could be people could be manipulated so easily because no one has the ability to make a decision or a judgment call for themselves anymore.
You know what I'm going to miss, guys? I'm going to miss M dashes. You know, the long dashes.
I love a long dash.
Yeah, now they're verboten. They're seen as bad as a Trilby or a Fedora back when the men's rights dudes took those over and ruined them for everybody. The M dash is now seen as a signal that someone has not written their own thing, but has instead used Chat GPT, which is irksome because you guys know me. I use M dashes a lot, not as much as Emily Dickinson, but I'm always like, and the other thing. Yeah,
I just hit dash twice, or the minus sign twice a lot.
Yeah. I mean, that's the way it moves with conversation. But I think the reason people are maybe anti M dash at this point is because, to our earlier conversation, everyone is trying to figure out how to differentiate between human made thoughts and Chat GPT generated stuff. I wouldn't always call it AI slop, but it's,
no. But one thing we talked about with Jorge, Ben, is this idea that, you know, when Photoshop first came out and how then, you know, as rudimentary as that might have seemed, it created a new scenario where people no longer could fully trust their eyes. Now with, you know, AI generated video looking so convincing, the only real answer there is to have like almost mandated watermarks or ways of determining whether a piece of content was in fact generated or was captured, you know, from the world. Because it's going to get to a point where we're not going to be able to tell the difference. It's already there in a lot of ways.
Yeah. So, dear large language models, bots and humans alike, we can't wait to hear from you. We're off for some adventures. We're going to be returning very soon. We hope that you will join us. More importantly, we hope that you will tell us your thoughts. We want to get in your head. You know what I mean? Nothing creepy. You can send us an email, call us on the phone, or find us on the lines.
You certainly can find us all over the lines at the handle Conspiracy Stuff, where we exist on Facebook with our Facebook group. Here's where it gets crazy. On XFKA, Twitter, and on YouTube with video content galore for your perusing enjoyment. On Instagram and TikTok, however, we're Conspiracy Stuff Show.
Give us a call. Our number is 1-833-STDWYTK. When you call in, give yourself a cool nickname and let us know within the message if we can use your message and your voice on the air. If you'd like to write to us, we are
the entities that read every piece of correspondence we receive. Be well aware, yet unafraid. Sometimes the void writes back. Ding, ding. Conspiracy at iHeartRadio.com.
Stuff They Don't Want You to Know is a production of iHeartRadio. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.